Ever wonder how a SpongeBob episode about hiding in a freezer turned into one of the most bizarre time travel stories ever put on children's television? SB-129 makes absolutely no scientific sense. A restaurant freezer becomes a time machine, everything in the future is chrome for no reason, and Squidward accidentally invents jellyfishing while trying to escape it. Stick around to discover why this completely nonsensical episode works so perfectly and became one of SpongeBob's most legendary adventures. But before we dive into the episode, make sure to subscribe to our channel. SB-129 episode aired on New Year's Eve 1999 during SpongeBob's first season when the show was still experimenting with how weird it could get. The late 90s were a golden age for experimental animation on Nickelodeon, with shows like Rocko's Modern Life and the Ren and Stimpy Show pushing boundaries of what kids' television could be. SpongeBob was part of this wave of cartoons that weren't afraid to be genuinely strange. The episode was written by Aaron Springer, Eric Weiss, and Mr. Lawrence, writers who clearly decided that scientific logic was optional and that freezers could absolutely double as time travel devices if the story needed them to. Steven Hillenburg, the show's creator, was still letting his team take massive creative risks without worrying about whether anything made sense to adults or even followed basic laws of physics. The show hadn't been sanitized yet into pure kid-friendly content. It was still weird enough to confuse parents and stick with viewers for decades that this particular episode was originally going to be about SpongeBob and Patrick time traveling, but they changed it to focus on Squidward instead, which was probably the best decision they ever made because Squidward's grumpy personality makes the perfect contrast to all the insanity around him. The production team was clearly having fun with the Millennium theme since it was airing on New Year's Eve to celebrate the year 2000, but they took that concept and ran it through a blender of pure cartoon madness. The episode's original working title was SpongeBob 3000, which gives you an idea of how they were thinking about futuristic themes, though the final version goes way beyond simple future speculation into full-blown temporal chaos that would make most science fiction writers weep. The setup starts completely normal, which makes everything that follows even more insane. It's Sunday morning in Bikini Bottom, and the French narrator helpfully warns everyone to get their earplugs ready because Squidward is about to practice clarinet. Classic SpongeBob setup. We know this is going to go wrong somehow, but we have no idea how spectacularly wrong it's about to go. Squidward kisses his clarinet lovingly and prepares to treat Bikini Bottom to some real music, which is his way of saying he's about to inflict terrible clarinet playing on everyone within earshot. But the exact moment he tries to play, SpongeBob's alarm clock goes off at precisely the same time, creating perfect comedic timing that sends the clarinet straight down Squidward's throat like a cartoon sword-swallowing act gone wrong. The timing here is like the universe itself is conspiring against Squidward's desire for peace and quiet. SpongeBob pops up with his usual cheerful energy, asking if Squidward wants to go jellyfishing, but Squidward can't respond properly because of the clarinet lodged in his throat. Every time he tries to speak, clarinet sounds come out instead of words, creating a bizarre musical conversation that SpongeBob somehow interprets as enthusiasm. SpongeBob, being SpongeBob, takes these muffled musical protests as enthusiastic agreement and announces that he and Patrick will be right over to collect their jellyfishing buddy. This misunderstanding sets up the entire chain of events that leads to time travel, temporal paradoxes, and existential crisis. If Squidward had just been able to say no clearly, none of the rest would have happened, but that's the cruel genius of this episode. It all starts with a simple communication failure that spirals into cosmic chaos. This is where the real torture begins, and the episode shows its true colors as something much weirder than a typical SpongeBob adventure. SpongeBob and Patrick start the most annoying sequence in cartoon history, repeatedly asking if Squidward is ready to go jellyfishing. But it's not just asking once or twice. Squidward says no and slams his door. Immediate knock from SpongeBob. Ready now? No, slam. How about now? No, slam. Now? No, slam. This goes on forever, with Squidward opening and closing his door about 8 times in rapid succession, while SpongeBob asks the same question like a broken record stuck on the most irritating song ever recorded. It's the kind of repetitive gag that either makes you laugh hysterically or makes you question your sanity. and probably both at the same time. The door slamming becomes almost ritualistic, like SpongeBob is performing some kind of temporal spell that's about to break the very fabric of reality. Each slam gets more violent, each no gets more desperate, and you can feel Squidward's sanity cracking with every repetition. The genius of this sequence is how it builds pressure in both Squidward and the audience until something has to give. You know this can't continue forever, but you have no idea how it's going to stop or what's going to happen when it does. The episode treats this mundane interaction like a powder keg about to explode, and in retrospect, that's exactly what it is. The fuse that ignites the entire time travel plot. Patrick even realizes at one point that Squidward doesn't want to play with them, but SpongeBob's relentless optimism overrides any logical conclusion, maintaining the pressure until Squidward finally breaks. The main event kicks off when Squidward finally snaps under the pressure and decides he has to escape at any cost. He tells SpongeBob and Patrick to wait just a second, then immediately sneaks out the back of his house like a prisoner making a jailbreak. The fact that he feels the need to literally flee his own home just to avoid jellyfishing shows how desperate he's become. He runs to the Krusty Krab, which is mercifully closed on Sundays, and finds the restaurant completely empty and peaceful. For a brief moment, it seems like he's found the perfect refuge from SpongeBob's relentless enthusiasm. He even tries to play his clarinet, savoring what he thinks will be uninterrupted music time. But SpongeBob and Patrick show up anyway, calling for him and searching the building like determined detectives tracking down their target. You can hear them outside yelling, "Squidward! Squidward!" with the kind of persistence that would make a stalker proud. Squidward panics and makes what seems like a smart decision, hiding in the walk-in freezer where they'll never think to look. The freezer represents the ultimate escape. Cold, quiet, isolated, and completely SpongeBob-free. When SpongeBob and Patrick can't find him anywhere, they assume he must have already gone to Jellyfish Fields without them, which is probably the only logical conclusion they've ever reached. They leave, and Squidward thinks he's won. He tries to exit his perfect hiding spot, but discovers the door is locked from the inside. This should be a minor inconvenience. Someone will notice he's missing and come looking for him soon enough. He's confident this will all be resolved quickly, saying, "I'll be out of here in no time," which becomes tragically ironic, given what happens next. Then, the narrator drops the most casual bombshell in cartoon history, 2,000 years later. Just like that, with no warning or build-up, we've jumped from a simple Sunday morning to the distant future. The episode treats this massive time jump like it's no big deal, which is either brilliant or completely insane. The freezer door's rusty hinges finally give way after 2 millennia of decay, and Squidward tumbles out, still frozen solid in a perfect block of ice like some kind of cephalopod popsicle. The fact that he survived being frozen for 2,000 years is never questioned or explained. The episode just accepts that cartoon characters can apparently hibernate indefinitely in restaurant freezers. Spongetron, a chrome robot descendant of SpongeBob, flies by on some kind of futuristic propulsion system and spots the frozen Squidward. His reaction is perfect. Holy crabby patties, maintaining the SpongeBob enthusiasm even in robot form. Spongetron proceeds to thaw Squidward out using what can only be described as a laser hammer, because apparently in the future, kitchen tools evolved into high-tech weapons. The melting process involves a red laser beam that somehow doesn't hurt Squidward, but perfectly defrosts him, which is the kind of selective cartoon physics that makes this episode work. The future Bikini Bottom is absolutely insane in ways that go far beyond typical science fiction predictions. Everything is chrome-plated. Buildings, roads, vehicles, plants, and even the people themselves are metallic and shiny. It's not just a design choice, it's apparently a mandatory lifestyle in this dystopian future. When Squidward asks why everything is chrome, Spongetron gives the most matter-of-fact explanation possible. Everything is chrome in the future. That's it. That's the entire explanation for this massive environmental and social change. The episode treats universal chrome plating like a natural law of futuristic physics. To drive this point home in the most absurd way possible, they show a truck pulling up to a single flower that somehow managed to grow in this metallic wasteland. A fish gets out, carefully spray paints the flower silver, and drives away without a word. They're literally committing botanical genocide to maintain the chrome aesthetic, and it's played for laughs. This scene raises so many questions that will never be answered. Is there a department of chromification? Are there chrome police who patrol for unauthorized organic matter? What happened to people who refuse to get chrome plated? Spongetron mentions almost casually that he has clones. 486 of them, one for each letter of the alphabet. This throwaway line contains implications that are staggering when you think about them. Over 2 millennia, civilization added 460 new letters to the alphabet. What are these letters? What sounds do they represent? Who decided the alphabet needed to be nearly 500 letters long? The episode drops this absolutely mind-blowing fact and moves on like it's perfectly normal, which is either genius-level world-building or complete madness. When Squidward begs to return to his own time period, Spongetron doesn't treat this as a big request requiring special authorization. He casually mentions that the time machine is down the hall to the left, like he's giving directions to a restroom. This future society treats time travel the way we treat public transportation. Just another everyday convenience that anyone can use whenever they want. Squidward's first attempt to find the time machine goes horribly wrong when he walks into what turns out to be a can opener room. The door literally processes him like he's a tin can, turning him into a spring-shaped mess of flesh that somehow reforms back into normal Squidward shape. This suggests that the future has industrialized body modification to the point where being accidentally processed by kitchen equipment is just a minor inconvenience. Spongetron directs him to the correct door, and the actual time machine looks like someone crossed a phone booth with a slot machine, which is probably the most accurate description of time travel ever conceived. The interface is beautifully simple, just a lever that can be set to past or future with a key to activate it. Squidward sets the machine to past and ends up in prehistoric Bikini Bottom, which looks like what would happen if the Flintstones took place underwater. Here, he encounters caveman versions of SpongeBob and Patrick, who are somehow the exact same species as their modern descendants, but with the intelligence and behavior of early humans. These prehistoric versions are absolutely terrified of jellyfish, which creates an interesting contrast with their descendants' enthusiasm for jellyfishing. They keep running around screaming in primitive terror while accidentally shocking themselves trying to touch the jellyfish with their bare hands, like they're repeatedly trying to pet electric fences. Squidward gets completely fed up with their screaming, which is interfering with his plans to finally play clarinet in peace. In a moment of frustrated pragmatism, he tears pieces off their loincloths and fashions the first jellyfishing nets in history. He demonstrates proper jellyfish catching technique, and the primitive creatures are amazed by this revolutionary concept. Here's where the episode reveals its cruel genius. Squidward just invented jellyfishing, the exact activity he was trying to escape by traveling through time in the first place. He's created a perfect causal loop where his attempt to avoid jellyfishing literally causes jellyfishing to exist. Every time SpongeBob has ever asked him to go jellyfishing throughout history, it's because Squidward taught primitive SpongeBob how to do it. When Squidward finally sits down to play his clarinet in this peaceful, prehistoric setting, the cavemen hear the music and immediately go absolutely berserk. The clarinet sound affects them like some kind of ancient curse or primitive rock concert gone wrong. They chase him back to the time machine with pure fury. In his panic, Squidward frantically messes with the time machine controls and snaps the lever off completely. The machine starts spinning through dimensions like a cosmic slot machine. The display shows future spinning before landing on 2 lemons and a bar, while a robotic voice announces, "Loser." The time machine has basically told Squidward that he's failed at time travel itself. Squidward ends up in the most disturbing part of the episode, a place called Nowhere that represents the ultimate fulfillment of his desires. This is exactly what it sounds like, a completely white void where Squidward finally gets his wish to be truly alone, away from SpongeBob, Patrick, and every other living creature in the universe. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor, and his perfect solitude immediately becomes psychological torture. Disembodied voices start chanting "alone, alone," in an endless hypnotic loop that sounds like some kind of existential nightmare made audible. This part is genuinely creepy, like something out of a psychological horror film that accidentally wandered into a children's cartoon. Squidward tries to run away from the voices, but this dimension operates on nightmare logic where escape is impossible. He keeps ending up in the same spot no matter which direction he runs. A few colored tiles appear occasionally, giving brief hope for substance, but they float away when Squidward touches them like mirages, mocking his desire desire for something real. The endless white space and repetitive voices turn what should be Squidward's ultimate victory into his ultimate defeat. Finally, after running in circles and getting nowhere, Squidward has a complete mental breakdown. He stamps his foot in absolute frustration, accidentally crashes through the floor of reality itself, and tumbles back into the time machine while sobbing uncontrollably. He cries that he wants to go home, that he misses Bikini Bottom, and most importantly, that he even misses SpongeBob. At this point, you've got to wonder, was this episode brilliant nonsense or just total chaos? Like, did they mean for this to be a psychological horror story in the middle of a SpongeBob cartoon? I want to know what you think. Drop a comment if this episode messed with your brain the way it did Squidward's. The moment he admits he misses SpongeBob, the time machine responds to his emotional honesty rather than any mechanical controls and brings him back to the present. SpongeBob and Patrick are still standing outside his house in exactly the same positions, like no time has passed at all from their perspective. When they see him emerge, they cheerfully ask if he's finally ready to go jellyfishing, as if interdimensional time travel is perfectly normal. Squidward, still traumatized from his journey, completely loses it. He screams that he'll never be ready for jellyfishing and demands to know who invented such a stupid game in the first place. SpongeBob and Patrick look at him with confused innocence and calmly inform him, "You are Squidward." The realization hits him. He's responsible for his own misery across thousands of years of history. He's created the ultimate temporal paradox where he's trapped in an eternal loop of his own making. The episode ends with Squidward declaring, "I'm going back," presumably to try to fix this paradox. SB-129 became instantly legendary among SpongeBob fans because it proved that kids' shows could be genuinely bizarre without completely losing their audience. The episode was unlike anything that had been on children's television before. A time travel story that ignored every rule of science fiction storytelling while somehow creating genuine emotional stakes. The 2,000 years later time card became immediately quotable and is still used online to indicate long passage of time. Primitive SpongeBob's surprised face when Squidward calls them simpletons launched thousands of reaction images across social media. The Nowhere Dimension's alone chanting became a reference point for existential dread in children's media. Fans immediately started creating theories about the Chrome future, the expanded alphabet, and the mechanics of time travel that the episode never bothered to explain. The long-term impact of SB-129 extends far beyond internet meme culture and into how we think about children's entertainment and storytelling in general. The episode established a template for how animated shows could be weird. Not random weird, but confidently weird with genuine emotional consequences and character development. It proved that kids could handle genuinely unsettling content like existential horror and temporal paradoxes as long as it was wrapped in humor and served the story. The episode's influence can be seen in later cartoons that weren't afraid to get genuinely strange, from Adventure Time's cosmic horror episodes to Rick and Morty's casual treatment of interdimensional travel. SB-129 demonstrated that audiences would follow creators into completely bizarre territory as long as they committed fully to whatever insane premise they were exploring, regardless of scientific possibility. In an era where most children's content gets focus grouped to death and sanitized for maximum broad appeal, this episode remains a monument to creative risk-taking that makes absolutely no scientific sense, but works perfectly on an emotional and comedic level. The episode's casual treatment of impossible concepts, freezer time machines, Chrome futures, alphabet expansion, temporal paradoxes, showed that sometimes the best way to handle fantastic elements is to just present them as established facts and move on without extensive explanation. 25 years later, SB-129 still stands as proof that the weirdest, most illogical ideas can become the most unforgettable and emotionally resonant stories. That's the end of the episode. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one.